Whether you know it or are willing to accept or admit that in this world there are a group of global elite superpowers that are all in people. This is known as the elite. And it has always been this way with humans since the beginning of time. Way back in the day, there were kings, and the kings ruled the people. And when the people began to dissent against the king's order, they were punished or they were controlled. This happened through dictators, emperors, governments, and it's a very, very carefully woven tapestry of people who, in the occult world, we may even refer to as the dark architects. I often get asked about this topic, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the information I'm willing to share with you that is in relation to the individuals that are the puppet masters of this world. In terms of numbers, the elite is 110,000 in terms of that number. I won't say why that number is the most number that it's mostly kept at, but that's where it usually sits always. These elites have been or are carefully orchestrating and quietly sitting in the background controlling everything to do with the world. So they are effectively the puppet masters that are puppeteering 8 billion souls. And that may have even gone up again, as it always does. So this is nothing new. This is nothing that, there's nothing new under the sun in terms of even looking at this. But since the beginning of the human nexus, we have seen a world that is woven from people that build the fabric of society and create the game. And the game is on you. You are playing the game. They are the ones who have built the game. There are many, many occult groups out there, and they are all tied into corporations like the World Economic Forum, BlackRock, Vanguard, Synergy, and all of this is connected to Pfizer, the banking system, and Palantir. And I could go on and on and on. We know that there are bloodlines, like the royal family, that will inbreed again and again to keep the bloodline of their power. This is all where we're at this world, in this world. Everything is controlled and everything is planned, from every war, from every election, from every so-called democracy that you could think of. It's all controlled and carefully orchestrated by the people that are constructing it. And this is not a joke. This is something you can easily look up on the internet. It's a system of control that has had dominion over the world for forever, really. The elites, in terms of what they want, what is their objective, is that they want to live forever. That is one of the biggest things that the elites really are frustrated by and hate, is that in the human world, the human body does age and atrophy over time. And the elites are obsessed with transhumanism, where they are wanting to transfer their consciousness into another body that could be younger, or merge with technology that will override nature. So in terms of questions that I often get asked around this, and that's why I decided to talk about this today, is someone asked me, what is it that the elites want? They want you to be enslaved on a level that we have never seen before. They want you to basically be as dumb as possible, as hopelessly dependent on the system that they control as possible. And they want to keep you locked in a system that kind of chews you up and spits you out, much like a battery that's used and discarded. The elites are working very hard to create narratives which they push through in agendas, and they have power over universities, which also create mind programming where they insert or plant things into the collective, and then tick, 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 a few years, 10 years later, we've got ideologies that came out of nowhere. They ultimately worship Lucifer, Satan, and they ultimately also worship the lower demons, mostly Baal and Murloc. You may know the famous 40-foot owl statue in Bohemian Grove, or you may even know the gold bull, the symbol of the bull on Wall Street, which is Baal. A lot of the companies, their logos are actually sigils, and those sigils are actually a calling card to the demonic world. So as we move into the age of technology, and this is all coming from a shaman point of view. If you don't know, I am a practicing shamanic person. I'm a healer, I'm a witch, I'm an occultist, I'm an astrologer. And so you're getting this from someone who is able to remote view and has been studying this very, very carefully for the last 15 years of my life. I have prepared some notes for this chat, so I'm going to start to go into the cabal and talk about some of this stuff with you. But I would ultimately really invite you to take the time to research a lot of this for yourself, because one of the tenets of occultism, particularly when we're dealing with the left-hand path or the dark path, the fallen path, is that it has to declare its nature over someone before it can actually do something. This actually bypasses a level of spiritual judgment which happens in the astral world when a human dies. So basically, they have to declare something in a form to you, which generally is jargon. And that's why you will notice that a lot of legal documents and legal terminology is very hard to understand. It's not really written in a way that like a standard human can really understand. And it's written that way, like the terms and conditions on your Apple contract. It's written that way because it doesn't want you to understand it. That's why it's written that way. Okay? So as we are moving into the final chapter of the human consciousness, we have gone through epochs. So in the spiritual world, through epochs, we do levels of transformation in the collective consciousness. So humans are actually all connected. So we had the epoch of, and this is an astrological epoch, by the way. So I have mentioned this before. So we had the epoch of Taurus, which was huts and people getting together in villages to go fishing. It was where agriculture came from, where we started growing plants and crops, and a bartering system was created before money, where humans would exchange things without a monetary value. So it was like, I have apples, you have oranges, let's swap. Different tribes were formed, and humans lived in a state of, in a state of harmony with the land. We do see this with a lot of native cultures around the world, wherever we go back in time, we see that wherever it is in the world. You'll see people that were spiritually connected to the land. Then we moved into, eventually in the next 2,000 years after that, we moved into the age of the Aries. So we went from Taurus into Aries, and then Aries was the age of the Roman Empire, where humans became decadent. They loved bloodshed and murder and rape and pillaging. And this was very much a free-for-all in the collective. And there was a time where life had little regard, and there was no really regard for life. This was also a time where there was interference from other things outside of the human world. But by the way, if you don't know this, the spiritual wars that have been here from the start have always been playing out through humans. And they always play out with key figures of influence like the elites that basically govern the humans, or the cockroaches, or the ants, as we would kind of call it. So without going too far into that, we went through this bloodshed period, and then we moved into the age of Pisces, which was the age of Jesus, the age of Jesus of Nazareth. He was born, he came through, and he was about love and about forgiveness and about choosing a path that was the opposite of the Roman Empire, that wasn't so self-indulgent. And it was about peace. It was about bringing in a set of laws and criterias of the spiritual world that people should abide by. Don't steal, don't kill, don't murder. And we did have other apostle type figures that came through, like Moses and things like that. This all happened. It has been changed around quite a lot, as humans often take things and rewrite them in their own image. So they've been fucked with a lot. But fundamentally, the age of Pisces was the age of spirituality. Then he was crucified, or that crucifixion happened, which performed a ritual. And that's not the point of this chat. But what I'm sharing with you is we are now moving into the final epoch of the human condition. Now, I say the human condition because in the next 100 years, humans are going to move into the merging of technology and chips within themselves. So humans are going to start to merge into kind of like hybrids, which is why the trans agenda was created and pushed to start preparing people to merge into this way of being. Okay, so I'm just giving you a little bit of history there, and we are finally in the age of Aquarius, all right, the age of the water bearer. Okay, there are references to this. There's also a lot of references to the mark of the beast, but I'm not going to go down the Catholic lecture of this. What I want to get into your head and really get you to please listen very closely is that now we're moving into a time where the elites are racing to develop AI, and AI will basically control you. Okay, you're basically going to just be a speck in an algorithm. So to the elites, you are not a human. You are worthless. You are just a grain of sand that to them, the only value that you have is your output in your probably meaningless day-to-day job, and you pay your taxes, and the only value that you bring to the country is the tax that you pay to your government, and the government owns you. If the government wants your house, it can take it to build something. The government is about to move into a phase where the elites will have such level of control that they will now be able to see fundamentally a human's life stages from birth as they're barcoded, and know like who you are, what you had for lunch yesterday. They will be able to know where you live. They'll know everything you've bought. They'll know everything you've looked up. They will fundamentally be able to control you. Okay, so going a little bit down the rabbit hole in this chat, it's going to get a little bit deep because we're going to have to understand that the human race itself is actually in a place now where it is under such threat and I'm not exaggerating this, I'm just sharing with you that this is now I see when I'm in my meditations and like I go quite far out into the forest or into nature, the feeling, and even if you're not a spiritual person, please, can you feel something is happening? There is something that is happening in the undertone of things. There is a static energy, like a storm is coming. All right, so you can feel that. It doesn't matter where you go. You could go out on a boat really far into the ocean. You could go, like I go, really far up into the bush, into the forest. That feeling is still very, very loud, and it's echoing through the world right now. All right. So there was a shift that did happen back in 2020 with the timeline tampering, I've been shown. But in terms of this topic, the human race is now under threat on a level that I don't think people quite comprehend. All right. So when it comes to the company Plantier, we need to look at what this is. So there are tech bro companies that are popping up everywhere, and these are basically data analytics companies that work through governments, and they create the software that basically governments and corporations and military entities use. Okay, so everything that we do these days is all done through the digital web, and it's not really so much done in real life. So the more that we do online, the more the spying system can come into operation. Okay, so you will understand at some point that your life will basically be completely like an algorithm in a way, and that's where we're headed now with digital IDs. So this is all going to be connected to law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and they will be able to predict and map out everything about your life, your contacts, who you spoke to, your travel patterns, your bank activity, your tax records, everything that you do will basically be stored in an algorithm and in a data system that can be easily accessed by corporations, by the government, and you'll basically be easily searchable. Okay, so everything about you will be built up into a profile with your medical records, your behavior, the things that you talk about, how you behave during a pandemic. All of this type of stuff is all going to be collected, and it's all going to be centralized into basically a system that will keep you kind of like a jug, kind of like a tongue-tied, a bug in a bell jar. So everything will be quietly surveilled, and this surveillance system will be working in the background. And it always comes under the guise of safety, and it always comes under the guise of, keeping things running smoothly or more efficiently or more kind of like easier for you. But as we know, as humans merge more and more with AI and they merge more and more with technology, the spiritual systems and faculties in a human become weaker. And that's what the elites ultimately want. They're embedding themselves into everything, all right? So all these systems of government are all run by the elites. So if you don't know, like rich, when you get to a certain level of like what I call fuck you rich, say for example, a black man and a white man got on an aeroplane, they are not going to be interested in talking about one guy being black and one guy being white because it's inconsequential to their existence. They know that they're above stupid, petty bullshit. But unfortunately, to the average dumb tax-paying citizen that's like a bug, they have been trained and programmed to fight with each other, to see it like, Democrat versus Republican, like all of that type of thinking is always implanted into the lower level of people in this world. All right, so humans are always, what was it? It was said, give them bread and a circus and they'll never revolt. That's why we have things like sport. That's why we have like, we've got people that will go live a very, basically in poverty, and then they will go and see a football match and get really worked up over the football match in their team and watch some millionaires kick a football around and then go back to their shitty life. So this level of distraction keeps people exactly that, distracted. It keeps people in a state of just being entertained. That's what we have with like all of the streaming companies. So you'll see like Netflix and Binge and Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, all of these things are all carefully constructed to keep you docile and complacent and to keep your frequency as low as possible. And when I say frequency, we're talking about ignorance and we're talking about fear. All right. So the more fearful you are, the more that you will just kind of operate as you're supposed to, live out your human life on their little spreadsheet, and then you die and another one replaces you. So when we have a level of moving into digital ID with this company called Plantier, what we're really looking at is a superpower that is going to be able to basically rack up body counts very easily and basically unalive people that kind of get in the way. So if you are a whistleblower, or if you're someone who speaks up, or even making videos like this, if you are on any level of something that it detects as a rebellion against the system, say for example, you're a journalist trying to do real journalism, you will be strategically removed, or the algorithm will decrease the level of exposure you get, which will control how many people can actually have access to you, which is something that I've noticed here, even on this YouTube channel, actually. So when you start saying certain words, like I'm saying now on this platform on YouTube, it's already being detected and scanned. So YouTube and apps and systems like this are already basically engineered through tech layering and tech policies, which dictate what can be said and what can't be said, all through data collection. So when all of these kind of, the goal of what they want is for everything to merge together. So the IRS, the FBI, the DHS, all of these agencies are all going to be moving into a single database that will be always performing surveillance on all individuals at all times. And this is what they want. They don't want to waste time having to cross-check things and corporations and get details. All they have to do is just type your name into a system and then bang, they've got access to your tax history, criminal records, migration status. And of course, this is always going to be sold under the banner of national security, but it is not. So obviously this is a centralized system that's all moving towards keeping you basically controlled. So you can't really go, rogue. You can't be a free spirit, and you can't really, at some point we will see kind of tiers coming into play. So what will happen, it's like you can't just get in your car and drive into another state, So all of this type of thing is where it's heading. So it's all going to be weaponized, and it's all going to be basically implemented, okay? Now, I understand if you're listening to this now and you're going, no, that won't happen. I want you to understand that, say, for example, the cost of living right now is so high. So we know that about 48% of Australians just living in my own country are all dependent on some level of NDIS support, or some level of Centrelink payment, or some level of subsidized housing help. This all comes from the government. So if the government decides that you have to scan your face and do digital ID, otherwise you're not going to get your payout, then you won't be able to put food on the table. You won't be able to go shopping for food. You won't be able to pay your rent. You'll be out on the street. So basically, you won't have a choice. You'll have to comply, and you'll have to upload your digital ID into the system that it's generating. And they're working right now on this as well. So digital ID is all being carefully constructed as I'm speaking right now. They're working on how they're going to streamline all of this. So if you're dependent on the government, it's either you do this or you don't get money. And if then, obviously you're screwed. So this is where we're at, and this is where it's all heading at. So if it's a numbers game, then it's exactly that's what it is. It's a numbers game. So people that have no chance to stand up against this and have to kind of conform to this high level of power, then that's exactly where it's at. Now we do see a lot of tech bro elitists that have been rising up. We've seen a lot of Elon Musk characters. And of course, we see the founder of Plantier, Peter Thiel, and Alex Karp are now people that are really coming into the radar, because they are people that are running the companies or are the founders of the companies that are being created to store your digital ID and create this system that will capitalize off, deep stating you, basically. So you may have seen a very famous interview that was recently done with Peter Thiel, where he was talking about how he was asked, should the human race be allowed to exist? And he actually very chillingly, as we have seen in the interviews, and you can Google this, took a bit of time to actually respond to that. He needed a minute to think about whether that was something that he wanted. So even the pause of that is already telling us something, that this one of the most powerful humans on the planet that's creating this level of technology that's going to run our lives and is already starting to run our lives is actually needing to think about how he feels about the rest of the world. So that's one of the things I want to share with you. When we have people that are so insanely wealthy, we are dealing with a level of human that doesn't have to live in survival mode. They don't have to think about food and bills, rent, gas, utilities. They don't have to think about car insurance and health insurance and things like that. They're way beyond that. So one of the things spiritually, now I'm going to share with you as from an occult point of view, when a human transcends that level of power, they literally start to get a God complex. They start to think that their influence and they think that they're like the spokesperson for the entire species of the world kind of thing. So they think about it. I want you to think about the psychology of an elitist. These are people that are just no longer driven by basic needs. They already have everything that they could ever possibly want. Okay, the only thing that a human wants is more power, and their desire for more power is what is really driving them. So you become you're just a player in their game that they've created. So ethical complexities within technology and how they try and shape the future is all they really care about. All right, they don't care about individuals. We're looking at things like war and things like that. Okay, you can do your homework. I mean, look up what Plantier even means. Look it up for yourself. So what we have here is some really fucked up shit that's going on. The elites and how they operate is a closed loop. All right, so it's a very tightly closed loop. So we have a lot of funding that goes from companies into governments, and then the governments write up these what are they called? They write up these types of, I've gone blank. They basically write up these types of new laws, which basically allow Silicon Valley to do what they want to do. So the government is funded by elites. All right, so you've got to stop thinking left versus right, blue versus red. That's what they want you to think. They want you to stay in this fragmented state where people are arguing with each other over things that are really inconsequential when the really biggest stuff that's happening is already happening over the top of your head. So we will see, we did notice, I recently, just sharing with you quickly, JD Vance made a direct investment to Peter Thiel, and it was $15 million into a state campaign. So all of these types of things really start to essentially, you look at them and you go, how could that be a coincidence? Well, it's not a coincidence. All right. So the government is all tied up in contracts with Palantir and with Elon Musk. It's all tied into this thing, like the Silicon Valley. It's all there. All right. So these people that are in charge have been making decisions and influencing things from basically a rigged game that they have created. And it's all been going on. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is Wikipedia 101. You can Google this stuff for yourself. So when I meet people and they're not educated on this or they don't have an interest in this, I find it really unsettling that it's like you're talking about things that really don't even matter. And you've got to understand that if we don't start talking about this type of stuff with these tech elites, like Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, then we're in big trouble, because we have people that are really self-described transhumanists that are ultimately wanting to merge technology and evolve beyond biological limitations. All right, so this isn't something out of a sci-fi movie. This is where we're headed. This is where it's all going. They see humans as something that is flawed. They see humans as irrational and inefficient. And they have a mindset that really is about kind of taking the humanity out of humanity itself. That's ultimately what they want. They don't really want the human race to endure in a natural state. This is where the spiritual warfare comes in. This is where the demonic world comes in, right? The demons and the lower astral is real, and they love tech bros. They love technology. These days, when you're talking to GPT chat, it's more likely now that you're actually communicating with something far more darker than you think you are. All right. So yes, there is an aspect of demonic connection now through technology that is starting to really advance itself over the human race. All right. So think about it. Just go back to that chilling interview with Peter Thiel. Like, I just can't, because the moment I saw that interview, I was just like, wow. Like, we've got people that hate humans running humans. So how could this ever work out in a human favor? All right. This isn't like late market capitalism, democracy stuff. This is like control that is moving over people on mass levels. All right. So the elites in themselves, like even when I meet like doctors or lawyers or surgeons, having run my own business for 15 years and having dealt with people, these types of people, you'll notice a lot of them are very narcissistic. A lot of them are elitists in the sense that they are born into wealth and privilege and connections. And they have a lot of like passed down generational wealth comes, even if they didn't have to go to law school. They had a lot of privilege. They went to private schools. They had a preset thing. So a lot of them are very disconnected from reality. They have people that clean their house. They have maids. They have like people that operate the stuff in the background, like car bills and electrical bills. They're living in a world that is all like, it's like an echo chamber of power that just reasserts itself back to itself. You know, I've met a lot of surgeons that actually hate people, and they get to a point where a lot of the elite mindset is they all kind of look after each other. They all groom each other. They're born in the upper echelons of society, in the halls of power. So a lot of them in this, not having to pinpoint a specific group, but a lot of them just live in this kind of loop that it has no close to it. So it's really interesting when you meet people on this level. As a spiritualist, I've met quite a few of them, and they are very detached from the spirit. They're very detached from the soul. A lot of them really have no soul. A lot of them really are obsessed with wanting to live forever. There's a lot of weird obsessions with elitists, with the top elites actually, not just the lower elites, but the top elites, where they will have very strange regimented diets that are very strict. And I've noticed that a lot of them don't eat very much because they know that they want to suspend themselves in this kind of state that is detached from the human form. As a spiritualist, I can tell you, the less food that you eat in the human form, the more that you can do in other realms. And some of them do have access to other realms, and they do have occultists like myself on tap. So they have us in the background working, privately for them to do remote viewing. CERN, CERN, does remote viewing. We know the CIA does remote viewing. This is all documented stuff. All right, so if you don't believe any of this, you can actually easily, this stuff is public at this point. It's not hidden. You can just go look it up easily. But yes, they have an obsession with wanting to become immortal. And a lot of them are basically kind of they're governing the government. Back in the day, the church used to have a massive influence in the government, and that's now starting to slip away. Christianity is now seen as something that's disgusting and should be destroyed. And they're letting that happen by flooding the countries with mass immigration that ultimately will be easier for them to control later. And I can't go into Islam too much on this video because the video will be taken down. And there's certain things I could say here which I can't. But basically, they're just crushing, they're crushing everything. So you'll see a wealth divide happening as well. And these people are spiritually, most of them are possessed by demons. Most of them have made deals even in group ceremonies where they dress up in basically robes like the KKK, and they will have their rituals. And there are tons and tons of different ritual groups and tons of esoteric groups that have all subgroups that have all kind of broken off, and do their own thing, like the Masonic Lodge. I could go on and on, but there's so many there. I could do another video talking about all of those, but they're there. All right. So to them, to the elites, you're just a data point on a spreadsheet. You're not a real person. They don't care about your hopes and struggles. They don't see you as a living, breathing human. You're just a number in a sea of numbers and a targets in algorithms that basically they control. They don't have any interest in you hustling and having to work, and fight tooth and nail every week to get through, surviving. These are visionaries of Silicon Valley elites and politicians. They live in luxury. They live in a world that is completely detached from cause and effect, much like Epstein. I would probably say Epstein was probably a banishing ritual where he was cast out of the group. And then they kind of throw him to the wolves as a cliche warning to others if they get a little bit too, out of place. A lot of them have a lot of parties that are very weird, a lot of boat parties, a lot of private parties. Back in the day, we saw the Rothschilds having a lot of private gatherings at their house where people, or different houses and castles, where they would wear all of these animal masks. And we also saw that in a bit of Stanley Kubrick's film Eyes Wide Shut, which is these occult groups wear masks so the people that are in the groups can't actually be identified to each other. But there's a secret undertone and levels within the group, all right, as a lot of occult groups work that way. Okay, believe me, I was in one way back in the day. And just leaving them isn't as simple as you would think. Once they own you, they own you. All right. So there's also different levels of elites. There's social elites, which can be influenced like Taylor Swift or Beyonce. There's also planted, what we call plants. So these are people that are just born into a family that will be targeted, and then they'll just make that child into a star, and then their influence comes from that point of view. Or there's non-plants, like potentially like Katy Perry, where they go into this, they're initiated into the occult groups. They go through hazing rituals, or some would say humiliation rituals. A lot of Hollywood actors, singers, performers all go through this as well. And once they own you, you're done. So you'll see a lot of imagery change in their work, much like when Taylor Swift started, she was doing, like, what was it, fairy tale romances, and she's like this country singer girl with blonde curly locks. And now if you see the evolution of her, going deeper into the occult imagery, you'll see like her sitting on a throne of Moloch with like a snake in her video clips. So you'll see it always goes, a lot of the artists and artisans, their work is also influenced by the elites as well. So it's all subliminal programming that gets put through the music. The entertainment industry and the music industry is also controlled by the elites, and it's controlled by the globalists as well. So every aspect of everything, the color, the branding, the symbolism, it's all carefully constructed by the top 1%. They control people on a level that, I would actually suggest, if you haven't got into the show Mr. Robot, I would really recommend you watch that show. I know that Sam Esmail, the creator of the show, was contacted during his time in production of making that show by certain very specific American agencies that were saying, hey, and even China didn't like that they were depicted in that show by the Dark Army. So go and have a look at Mr. Robot. And if that show doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will. Because one of the things about that show was everything that happened in that show was actually possible. That's why some of the greatest novelists or writers in the world, like Margaret Atwood, when she wrote The Handmaid's Tale, this was from things that have actually already happened. Like wet nurses, it's already part of the human history. Go look it up for yourself. At some point, I would say a lot of records that we have access to now will start to be recalled. As we know, in George Orwell's 1984, a lot of information is silenced or distorted or changed. So you can't just kind of go back into the past and look in the 1950s and see how people lived. It will kind of be erased or classified. And they do that because they don't want people to look back in time and see how good life was back then, the freedoms and liberties that humans once had. They don't want that. They just want you to see. It's kind of like putting blinders on a horse. It's like you only get to see what they want you to see, what they show you. They do this through the media now as well. It's like blinders completely on either side. So you are only shown a narrative that they have prepared for you to consume that will program you into becoming a slave. That's why the school system was built by the elites as well. So getting on a yellow bus, it's the Pavlov's dog thing. If you say what the teacher says and repeat it back to her, then you pass, you get an A+. It's not critical thinking, it's just regurgitating information. And if you say it back the way that she or he said, then you get to go into the next level. All right. So it's all basically slavery. It's all been designed that way to keep you as a slave in a system that basically just crushes you. And it's getting harder and harder and harder every day. You can see that. People have changed. You can see the shifts of consciousness. When you go into the streets, you'll see the poverty now everywhere in the world. Society is starting to collapse. So this new thing can kind of come through and have uniform. And that's what they ultimately want. So publishing videos like this get people in the mindset of being, challenge everything, fight. You've got to get awake, not woke, but wake the fuck up. All right, that's why I do these videos. All right, so Someone asked me in the comments, was it about investment bankers and was it about Jewish philanthropists? Yes, it was. Yes, the Rothschilds were a very shadowy Jewish cabal. Yes, the Rothschilds, it is the Jews. Okay, I know that sounds terrible, and I don't want to put all Jews in that like in a conspiracy thing, but yes, the Jews, a lot of it is connected to that, but I can't say specifically which Jewish family, but yes, it was a German Jew. I can't say on this video, but yes, it was. I don't know. I'm just sharing with you some of my knowledge, and you're getting an inside view in how I think and what I've come to learn and know. So the elites are operating in a world that is way beyond what you could think, a human experience is, and transhumanism is where it's all going to be heading. So wake the fuck up. Look at these companies. Look at the world economic system. You'll own nothing. Klaus Schwab, you'll own nothing and be happy. Vanguard, the banks, the systems, JP Morgan. Okay, it's all controlled, even right down to the Pfizer, Bill Gates. These people, they get on such a level of demonic attachment that they see themselves as gods that should be controlling and influencing the human race. All right, get awake. Love and blessings to you. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Please leave comments below. If you would like to book me, we can talk about this. You can pay me for my knowledge. I'm happy to go deeper in a phone chat with you. I'm also a spiritualist. I offer spiritual consultations. We can talk about anything you like. I have a very strong range of knowledge on occult matters, the demonic world, the angels, spirituality, astral realms, astral travel. I'm very well rounded on all of this type of stuff. I am a practicing medium, I'm a shaman and an astrologer. So if you'd like to book me for a natal chart report, please go to my website and do it now. It's a great way to support what I do, and you can send in your details and I will do a recorded reading and send it back to you, and you will be amazed at what I can tell you about yourself. Lots and lots of love and blessings to you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to all of this today. I know it's a lot, but I'm a lot. It's a lot. All right. Bye. Bye.